So let's get into the summary for the Iron Claw before we get to the review. And just to summarize the film, if you're familiar with the Von Erich family, then you know it's a wrestling family that has experienced great tragedies. But if you're not familiar with them, let's just say when it comes to the Iron Claw, it's definitely a bit of a tearjerker as we watch the living eldest of the Von Erichs, who's still alive today, watch one by one each of his brothers either go through a personal tragedy that leads to them no longer being with us, or else some type of medical incident that leads to them no longer being with us. And because of the way that Zac Efron plays Kevin as the eldest living brother, it's devastating in an almost death by a million cuts type of way. Now, getting to the review, what this movie really drives home is the pain of loss. For even if you haven't lost a sibling or even a close family member at this point in your life, lucky you, it's driven by this film how impactful that is. Because in the early parts of the movie, it's shown that when it comes to Kevin, his dream is to wrestle with his brothers, and eventually, as they get older and retire, just live on maybe one big ranch or one big plot of land, because they're Texans, so they own a lot of land. And that's just his dream. He wants to grow up with his brothers, go old with his brothers, raise families in the same area, and then, of course, die with his brothers close to him. But unfortunately, for Kevin, he gets to definitely see his brother hit some highs, but he also is part of them hitting some lows as well. Whether it's Kerry's lows after he gets fired from the WWF, Michael's lows after he has some weird type of brain thing after getting injured in the ring. David, he was watching him go on a path to become a world champion, and then something happened, and honestly, it's probably one of the most devastating things to watch this person who goes so joyous and happy to be able to interact and mess around with his brothers, to going to one funeral after another, to the point where he can barely contain himself when he's watching his two boys interact with each other, knowing that at a certain point in the movie, he's not going to be able to build more memories with his brothers. He just can reminisce over the ones that he already has. Though, I should note, he's not alone in really driving this home, because there's also the mother, Doris, who, in some ways, you may not like Doris at first, because it seems she doesn't want to get involved with some of the issues that the family has, especially when it comes to the brothers' relationship with their dad. Yet, as time goes on and you see one brother after another go, you learn to understand her in a way. That this may be separation or whatever's going on with her, it's because there's only so much pain, especially as a mother, you can take before it's just too much. And while she doesn't do anything to herself, there is a scene in the movie where Pam, who's Kevin's eventual wife, she's checking in on Doris, seeing what's happening, and Doris is just like, I can't put on this black dress again. I don't know what to do. And it's really a turning point for the character, where you, for the most part, have been caring, crying about what Kevin's going through, especially as it starts to put him into a deep depression and all this loss. But then when you see Doris have that scene with Pam, it hits you almost just as hard. Following that up, while Kevin is pushed to be the lead, because arguably Zac Efron is probably the most big name in this, even though Jeremy Allen White is really getting up there. But I will say this, even though those two gentlemen probably have the most recognizable faces, at least for my generation maybe, that doesn't mean that everybody else is just fodder for their character journeys. Each character is given a time to be in the sun, for us to get to know their personalities, and so that it's not just Kevin who gets hurt by what happens, but also you in a way get saddened, shocked, and definitely in your feelings a bit. Especially because I don't want to say this movie is an exploitive tearjerker, but it definitely knows how to get you in your feelings. And even when it comes to the ending and the stuff that it does, like, I probably watched this movie a week ago, and I could already feel like a little bit of a mistiness in the side of my eyes just from remembering how this movie delivered on just hitting you in the gut over and over again, if not emotionally putting you in the same pain as Kevin and his brothers went through in the ring. But with that said, this movie's by no means perfect, especially when it comes to the performances. There's a gentleman who plays Ric Flair, who surely you know if you have any concept of wrestling, and I would say his performance of Ric Flair kind of reminded me of Chadwick Boseman as, how about to say Rick James, as James Brown, in the case of he understands the movement, he understands the voice, he understands the persona, but he isn't able to really capture that energy and really give you what made this person famous. And I know maybe that might be controversial because people like Chadwick Boseman as James Brown, but I felt like it was more of a performance in honoring, and he got swallowed by James Brown's persona. And in many ways, the actor who played Ric Flair in this one got swallowed by everything that the actual Ric Flair is, to the point where there's no separation of this actor making it his own and really kind of driving who Ric Flair is beyond the big persona. Instead, we just get someone who's having a very expensive cosplay moment. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. And the last on the fence topic for us is that while The Iron Claw is very much a drama, it's also a sports movie, but it doesn't have that same energy as Southpaw, Creed, or that recent Adam Sandler basketball film. I think also had that good energy where you really take note of the sports moments. In terms of watching Zac Efron do crossbodies, him dealing with getting a suplex on a concrete floor, there is a recognition, like with real wrestling, that there is an amount of pain that goes into performing these moves, but I feel like it doesn't present the kind of energy, the kind of pump, so that when it comes to watching one match after another or one scene after another of wrestling, that you still get that same oomph and drive. Because almost like the opposite of most action movies, like in my mind, action movies, they have gun scenes, car chases and all that, and they're obligated to have a story in order to justify it. When it comes to the Iron Claw, I feel like the wrestling scenes are obligation when they really just want to tell the story of the Von Erichs, especially their rise and their tragic downfalls. But with all that said, I think The Iron Claw is probably one of the best ensemble movies of the year and is bound to bring an audience to their tears as they witness what, even in the movie, they say is the curse of the Von Erichs.